The air in Fort Arlington that morning was heavy with the weight of ceremony and pride, but also with something darker, something brewing quietly beneath the surface. The rows of soldiers stood tall under the rising sun, boots gleaming, eyes forward, the brass glinting like fire. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day to honor valor, sacrifice, and unyielding dedication. But for Captain Elise Carter, it was more than just a ceremony. It was the day she would finally reclaim her name and confront the man who had tried to destroy it. Elise stood among the ranks, her uniform pristine, her posture perfect, but her hands trembled faintly behind her back. No one could see the war raging inside her, the storm of memories that refused to fade. She remembered the cold nights in the desert, the endless patrols under the punishing heat, the sound of explosions echoing across the valley. She remembered the faces of her fallen comrades, men and women who had followed her orders when the world seemed to crumble. But what she remembered most vividly was the moment she was betrayed. 3 years earlier, during a classified operation in the Middle East, Elise had led her platoon into an ambush. The intel had been faulty, or at least that's what she had been told. But deep down she had known something wasn't right. Someone had fed false coordinates, and that mistake had cost lives. When she filed a report, demanding an investigation, her commanding officer at the time, General Marcus Hale, dismissed her. He called her emotional, unfit, and insubordinate. Within weeks she was removed from her post, stripped of honors, and quietly reassigned to desk duty. The whispers followed her everywhere. Soldiers who once looked up to her now looked away. The betrayal burned deeper than any wound, but she refused to give up. Elise spent those 3 years rebuilding her record from scratch, taking the hardest assignments, volunteering for missions others feared. Every bruise, every scar, every sleepless night, she carried them as proof of her resilience. She had made herself into something unbreakable. Now on this day, under the flags and fanfare, fate had brought her back, and so had justice. She didn't know it yet, but destiny had a cruel and poetic way of balancing the scales. When General Hale arrived at the ceremony, his presence was like a shadow swallowing the sunlight. Tall, broad, his chest heavy with medals, the kind of man whose reputation walked into a room before he did. The crowd straightened instinctively. His voice boomed with authority as he inspected the line of soldiers. But when his eyes fell on Elise, something in his expression flickered. Shock, then disdain. He hadn't expected her to be there. Not her. Not the woman he'd once humiliated, whose career he'd tried to erase. He marched toward her, his boots pounding the ground like thunder. "Captain Carter," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. "What are you doing here?" Elise didn't flinch. Her heart pounded, but her face was calm, carved from quiet strength. The commanding officer of the base, Colonel Reeves, was standing nearby, watching carefully, though saying nothing. The ceremony was moments from beginning, and the general's anger was already seething. Hale's voice rose. "Answer me, Captain. Did someone invite you to stand among my soldiers?" His tone carried venom, and a few nearby troops shifted uncomfortably. Elise's silence only seemed to fuel his rage. His jaw tightened and his hand moved, too fast, too carelessly. He reached out, his motion sudden as if to strike her across the face in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a heartbeat of disbelief. But before his hand could reach her, a voice thundered through the microphone. "Stand down, General!" Every head snapped toward the stage. Colonel Reeves, the base commander, was glaring at Hale, his hand raised in warning. The entire parade ground fell into stunned silence. Reeves stepped forward, his voice steady, commanding, absolute. "You will lower your hand and remember where you stand, because Captain Elise Carter now outranks you." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Hale froze. The echo of that sentence hung over the field, impossible to ignore. Soldiers exchanged looks of confusion, shock, and awe. Elise's eyes widened. She hadn't known either. Reeves continued, stepping beside her now, his gaze locked on the trembling general. "As of this morning, by order of the Department of Defense, Elise Carter has been promoted to Major General for distinguished service and extraordinary leadership during Operation Stormlight, the mission she was framed for 3 years ago." It was as if time stopped. The entire assembly erupted in murmurs, disbelief rippling through the ranks. Hale's face went pale. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He had spent years burying her name, forging reports, silencing anyone who questioned him, and now, before the entire command, the truth had surfaced like a long-suppressed storm. Reeves turned toward Elise and saluted. "Welcome back, General Carter." The applause began hesitantly, one soldier, then another, until the entire field roared with pride. The sound was overwhelming, powerful, cleansing. Tears welled in Elise's eyes, but she held her salute steady. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of justice, not as revenge, but as redemption. Hale, trembling with humiliation, tried to speak, but Reeves silenced him with a quiet, cold look. "You'll be escorted off this base," he said. "Effective immediately." As the MPs approached, Hale's proud posture finally cracked. He glanced at Elise one last time, and in her eyes he saw not triumph but mercy. That was the final wound his pride could not bear. When the ceremony concluded, Elise stood alone at the edge of the parade ground, the sound of applause fading into memory. The sun was higher now, glinting off the medals she had earned not from privilege but from pain. She thought of the soldiers she had lost, of the promises she had made to never let their sacrifices fade into lies. Her heart ached, but it was whole again. She whispered softly to the wind, "We made it." And for a moment, it felt like those lost voices whispered back. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the power of courage, justice, and redemption, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who believes in standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. Special request to comment. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Elise's place? Would you have forgiven or fought back?